Good evening and welcome to Crossroads for mid-March. We're almost at St. Patty's Day here, and while we're on the subject of adventure and exploring our great spring days now that the rain have started, our guest tonight is going to tell us about how our trails and our bikeways and our green infrastructure helps connect our community. So I'd like to welcome Tom Pierce to the Crossroads Show.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Tom. First-time guest.
Yes.
Long-time friend. And Tom, you're representing tonight a group called Public Access Trails Hawaii, or PATH for short.
Right.
Yep. And PATH has existed how long?
PATH has been around for about 5 or 6 years now, maybe a little bit longer. Time passes by pretty quickly. Would you like for me to tell you a little bit about how it got started?
Yeah. Things don't happen by themselves. Something happened.
There are some great people behind it. David Brown, a longtime trail advocate.
Legendary David Brown, yes,
and,
Dr. David Brown.
And I know he's been a hike leader at times and those kinds of things.
He was the Sierra Club's first hike leader back in the day, 1976, I think. He was a young doctor at that time.
Okay, so
he's still a young doctor. But
as you know, he loves to hike, and he's also been a great at volunteering his time to really advocate for trails.
That is true.
On the advisory council for Haleakala, which we should spend a moment at some point maybe talking about, which is the advisory council back to the Department of Land and Natural Resources. I know he's been serving on the Maui advisory council for quite some time.
Oh yeah, years and years and years. God bless him.
And so David was instrumental in it, and he brought along some other just really notable pathway advocates and trail advocates. Joe Bertram. Yes. Representative Joe Bertram.
Well-known bikeways and trails advocate, yeah.
And so Joe was there from the very beginning with a lot of the early meetings, which I think were at the Kahului Library, sitting around a table there, forming the ideas. And Ken Schmidt.
Oh, yeah.
Ken Schmidt, who runs Hike Maui.
Hike Guide, yeah.
And also who's just a wonderful resource in terms of trails and just has a real love for the backwoods on Maui.
Yeah, that's unparalleled, and Ken also has a commitment, I think, to having people enjoy the outdoors safely and so forth like that.
Yes. So, and we've had some other board members that have come and gone during that period who've also helped quite a bit, but all three of those gentlemen have been very much involved, and I've been involved to a certain degree, both originally as a board member and then later as an attorney.
No girls?
We have had some girls along the way. Monica George.
That's right. I remember Monica. Yeah.
Who's now at Hawaii Island Land Trust, so she was involved, and we're looking for board members and volunteers. So
okay. So if you like to hike, like to bike, like to get out and do some good with some fun people, they can go to your website and do a contact us.
Yes.
Path.org?
Pathmaui.org.
Pathmaui.org.
So, what happened is Dave originally came to me with a few issues, and at that time what I suggested was, look, this is really, you have a lot of issues here that really make a lot of sense as a nonprofit. Why don't you form a nonprofit and start to get people involved and engaged in that? So this is what I would still call the organization, even though it's been around for a few years, in its formative stage, but we have gone through a strategic planning process, and we have a mission statement. The mission statement is building community ties by connecting people and places through trails, urban paths, and bikeways. And the reason we selected that mission statement is we really feel strongly that trails are just not a way to go get recreation. They're not just a way to get into the woods. They really
these are about people.
A way to connect.
Yeah.
And really it goes back to how everyone in Hawaii, before the vehicle came along, or the automobile, everyone, that's how they actually made their way around here. And in fact, this was a very, very rich place. Not just Maui, but all the Hawaiian Islands were rich with trails that connected these different places and the people that you would meet along the way.
Well, my research about old days in McKenna and other places indicated how important the trails were. The trails held the stories of your ancestors. So there were different places along each trail that were ascribed to certain events that were important to your family's history or to the history of your area. And so if that trail was gone, the setting of that story was gone. So it was really kind of an important part of the fabric of the community and of the culture. It was a cultural feature, not just a convenience feature like we look at, oh, there's a road and now this road is closed, so I take another road. It was very, very different. The layers of meaning were deeper.
I think that's right. And the history, I haven't had a chance to dig into it as deep as I'd like, but one of the trails that we'll talk about here quite a bit in a few minutes is the Haleakala Trail. And just in the research I've done on that one, it very much has that family aspect to it, because at least one of the purposes of using Haleakala Trail was to get to one of the Pico locations inside the crater.
Oh, too.
So
yeah.
All the families after the birth of a child, or a lot of the families at least on the North Shore, would have used that as a way to go up and say their blessings and to try to present good tidings to their child.
So very culturally significant with, once again, the family stories that connect to it, and I'm sure the events that happen on the way to bring the Pico to hide it in the rocks. What about you? You've lived in Maui longer than the 5 or 6 years that Path's been around.
I have.
You've been here for a while.
In fact, I think you and I have known each other since pretty close to when I got here in 1990, which was when I first.
Was that the beginning?
Actually,
wow.
I showed up on the Big Island in 1990 and ended up out here in 1991, I think.
Well, I knew you before you went to law school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You were a gardener.
That's right, a gardener, woodworker, and a whole bunch of other things along the way. But my passion, and you know how it is, you reach a middle-age point where you really, I was a gardener, a stockbroker in a former life. That's really, I came, actually from doing that on the mainland and was looking for some kind of change. But
and where did you live before you moved to the Big Island or Maui? Where did you move?
Most recently, right before that, was Washington State. And if I was a windsurfer at the time, and that was certainly a big draw. I was coming out to windsurf. When I really started searching, so I really was looking for a second career, and when I started searching for it, I'd always had a very strong feeling about environmental issues, and I also felt like I had a pretty good ability to write and think well, but the writing was always something that came pretty naturally to me. So I said, how can I combine those two and
make some money?
And make some money along the way. Because I did have a 2-year-old daughter at the time. I was making these difficult decisions.
Yes.
But at any rate, ended up going on to law school and focusing on environmental law throughout the whole time. And Hawaii, environmental issues are very much also land use issues. So even though I didn't know it when I started, I ended up really getting into the land use issues and the property side of things, because those really go together quite a bit here in Hawaii.
And some people who may know you from your early involvement with the Coastal Land Trust here.
Right. So once again, were
you the first president?
I was the first president of Maui Coastal Land Trust, and that was something that was an entirely new and different area, but one that really I just absolutely love the concept behind it, which is that it's a partnership between conservation-minded people and landowners who share a lot of the same conservation concepts.
Yeah, it's a bridge. It's a bridge so that it allows good things to be done.
Right.
Yeah.
So Maui Coastal Land Trust has become Hawaii Island Land Trust, and
that's right. And it goes on. Yeah.
You and I sat in a bunch of board meetings and late evenings on that one.
Yes, and it's so it's a good evolution.
So that has been, a lot of my work has over the years has been in that side, the property side, and with the land conservation side, and I absolutely love it.
So you've been able to help a lot of people do good things with their land, in essence, yes?
Right. It started off just working for Maui Coastal Land Trust as an organization, and then it slowly morphed into consulting with landowners. And we're fortunate to have a lot of landowners here that can make some decisions that really are quite wonderful for the land. They don't have to maximize the development for it always. They can really look to preserve it. They might be doing it either for conservation purposes or for agricultural purposes. And there can be some really great things that come out of that.
So you're perfectly positioned, it seems, to dive into an organization like PATH because it's about land use and it's about human use, and
well,
you love to hike and bike and all those things.
I love to hike, and it was certainly one of the things I did as a kid. And so when Dave Brown sought me out, he hit a soft point for me on that. And what has been a natural progression is I have been working on more and more nonprofit types of issues. So it was up my alley to help him out with the establishment of that nonprofit, as I've done with other folks with nonprofits. But at any rate, what PATH, just getting back to the PATH's mission a little bit, we have tried to fulfill, we think that there's a niche out there that's not being filled by the state and isn't necessarily being fulfilled by some of the other organizations. And in fact, one of the things we did early on was we had some focus group meetings where we brought in and encouraged a lot of agency folks as well as nonprofits to come in and share stories about where they thought there was possibly some spots that were missing.
You're absolutely right. If you're just tuning in, Tom Pierce is our guest, and Tom is working with an organization that is preserving trails and public accesses here. And these are all public accesses that you're working with, yes?
Right, and that's what I'd like to spend a moment just talking about.
Right here on
Maui. Is we first see ourselves, and this is, Dave has felt strongly that one of the things that PATH could be is a research arm. They could be focused on archiving and identifying trails and also facilitating some of the discussions that could happen along those lines. So as an example, one of the projects that we are slowly starting to take on is inventorying already known or perhaps forgotten shoreline access points along the North Shore.
Really?
That were these what might have been required by the county during a development process.
Oh, yes.
And they're on the maps. If you can find the map from the subdivision files or wherever, they're sitting there on the maps. So in some cases, they're actually being used. In other cases, they're just on the map.
Yeah.
But they really should not be forgotten, and they are really a resource for the public. So the county, in the process of doing this, they had the time to go ahead and say, Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, while you're in the process of subdividing this, we want to make sure that we preserve shoreline access.
So there'd be an easement recorded.
There'd either be an easement or actually, exactly, in most cases it'd be an easement. It's recorded, it shows on a map, those kinds of things. But a lot of times that was all that was required at that point in time. And
no one had to show an actual trail.
And the county didn't necessarily put that in a particular spot. So we'd like to go back and find those. And we have been finding them just by happenstance as we're working on different projects and those kinds of things.
That's fascinating.
The other thing that we've been dealing with, which I think is a really important issue, is that there's a lot of people that say, yes, it's great to have trails, but we're really concerned about having tourists overrun trails, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I think it's a legitimate concern.
In our neighborhood, you used to live there, it would be terrible if we were a stop on the tourist map.
And so, one of the things is, I think the more trails you have, the less likely that's going to happen. That's one thing. And it is some of these super unique ones that get hit a lot. But one of the things that I've proposed, and we'd like to get started, I think at some point, I think I speak for the board on this, is I really like the konohiki concept, which was the idea that there was someone on a local level who really understood the resources and who helped to make sure they got distributed in a way that was fair. Yeah,
and I'm going to have some folks on a little bit later this year to talk about the Ahumoku consuls, and the Ahumoku consuls are returning that konohiki concept where people whose family have long connections to the land, and they're not set that they have to be of any particular race. Just if you have the connections and you have the love of the Aina, you could be part of this consul that talks about the resource history and tries to make wise management decisions. And it's sort of similar, I think, to what you're talking about.
So what we would like to do with that concept is to say, hey, look, we understand you in a local community, and let's just take any little small, one of the small old roads off of Hana Highway that heads down into a Mackay